it happens in a social level, because we live in a society that actually is profoundly alienated. And we live in a society that actually validates our invalidity. We live in a society that validates our false self. So that not only do we develop these compensatory mechanisms, it's even that we're rewarded for it. So let's say you're a deeply wounded person and you emotionally shut down so badly that your eyes go dead because you were hurt so badly, you couldn't bear to look at reality.
Today's society feeds us a relentless stream of unrealistic standards and expectations, constantly reinforcing our insecurities. This false narrative pushes us to conform, making us believe that our worth is tied to how well we measure up to these ideals. But this cycle of seeking approval and comparing ourselves to others isn't just disheartening, it's actually making us mentally and emotionally sick. What if breaking free from these societal constraints and embracing our true selves could lead us to genuine fulfillment and well-being? Why do we constantly dwell on the past? Because today's society feeds us a false narrative, validating our insecurities and making us feel inadequate. This relentless pressure to conform to an unrealistic standard isn't just misleading, it's making us sick. But what if we could break free from these societal constraints and embrace our true selves instead?
No love for myself. Even just typing this letter, I tear up. It took 34 years to finally love myself. And I'd say that's pretty good. If she did it in 34 years, she's way ahead of the game. I asked how to hold on to this, how to keep my dragon, and this amazing love that I've discovered, and was made clear. Honor thyself, make decisions that strengthen you, not weaken you. Release ego. If you live to prove something, to please others, you will kill your dragon. And a few other points that she learned, but it's that phrase about if you live to prove something, to please others, you will kill your dragon. I suggest that all of us, that the dragon is her phrase. That may not be an entity or an image that personally resonates with you, but whether it does or not, what she's talking about, Andrea is talking about, is finding herself and connecting with her essence. And I'm suggesting to you that all of us, doesn't matter what we believe, impels us to do this work with the plant spirits. What we're actually looking for essentially is ourselves. And if we're looking essentially for ourselves, the question is, why do we have to look? What happened? And how does this experience with the plants, substances, help us find ourselves? Now, as some of you know, my work, amongst others, has been with addictions. And in addiction, there's a very interesting phrase that's used. When you heal from addiction, it's called recovery. And recovery is another interesting word because we just take it for granted, but think about it for a moment. What does recovery mean? It means that you find something that you've lost.
To further illustrate Andrea's experience, we explore her journey through the use of ayahuasca. Andrea had always felt like a stranger in her own life. Struggling with addiction and haunted by unresolved trauma, she wandered through her days in a haze of numbness and despair. Her countless attempts at therapy and rehab seemed to offer only fleeting relief, leaving her feeling as lost as ever. When a friend mentioned ayahuasca, an ancient plant medicine used for deep spiritual and psychological healing, Andrea was intrigued but skeptical. Driven by desperation and hope, she traveled to a remote retreat deep within the Amazon rainforest, seeking something that traditional methods had failed to provide. As the ceremony commenced, Andrea joined a group of fellow seekers in a circle. The shaman's chants and the aroma of burning herbs set the stage for the night's journey. She drank the dark, bitter brew, and soon the effects began to unfold. Andrea's mind was swept into a vivid, kaleidoscopic realm of visions. The walls of her consciousness seemed to dissolve, exposing memories and emotions she had long buried. She saw the faces of those she had hurt and felt the heavy burden of her own pain and regret. For the first time, she was forced to confront the traumas that had shaped her life and led her to addiction as a form of escape. The visions were intense and overwhelming, but they also provided Andrea with a profound sense of clarity. She began to understand how her past traumas had influenced her behavior and emotional state. The plant medicine was not merely revealing her pain, it was guiding her through it, offering new perspectives and insights. In the midst of her journey, Andrea experienced a deep emotional release. The tears she shed were not just signs of sorrow, but also of liberation. As she confronted her guilt and self-blame, she felt a surprising sense of compassion for herself. The experience helped her see her addiction as a coping mechanism rather than a personal failure. By the end of the ceremony, Andrea felt a significant shift within herself. The plant medicine had illuminated a path to healing that she had not previously recognized. She left the rainforest with a sense of renewed purpose and a heart lighter than it had been in years. Returning to her daily life, Andrea carried with her the insights and strength gained from her ayahuasca journey. Though her past remained, she approached her future with greater resilience and clarity. The experience had not erased her struggles, but it had provided her with the tools to navigate them more effectively. With a newfound sense of self, Andrea began to embrace self-care and sought ongoing support, determined to live a life that was true to her authentic self. In the midst of her journey, Andrea experienced a deep emotional release. The tears she shed were not just signs of sorrow, but also of liberation. As she confronted her guilt and self-blame, she felt a surprising sense of compassion for herself. The experience helped her see her addiction as a coping mechanism rather than a personal failure. By the end of the ceremony, Andrea felt a significant shift within herself. The plant medicine had illuminated a path to healing that she had not previously recognized. She left the rainforest with a sense of renewed purpose and a heart lighter than it had been in years. Returning to her daily life, Andrea carried with her the insights and strength gained from her ayahuasca journey. Though her past remained, she approached her future with greater resilience and clarity. The experience had not erased her struggles, but it had provided her with the tools to navigate them more effectively. With a newfound sense of self, Andrea began to embrace self-care and sought ongoing support, determined to live a life that was true to her authentic self.
You find something that you've lost, but whatever you found couldn't have been destroyed, and it must have been there all along, otherwise you couldn't find it. So what is it that people recover when they recover from, say, addiction? Well, what they recover, and I often ask this question, and the spontaneous response, including at a talk I gave yesterday, is, I found myself. So people recover themselves, which is exactly what Andrea is writing about. She found her dragon, she found herself. And then the question then is, how do we lose ourselves, and why is it so difficult to reconnect? And how do these experiences with the plants help us? How do they facilitate this reconnection? And that question leads to the very essence of trauma. Because what I'm suggesting is that it's trauma that makes us disconnect in the first place. In fact, it's not that trauma that makes us disconnect. Trauma is the disconnection. And my friend Peter Levine, who is one of the world's trauma experts, written a wonderful book, amongst many other wonderful books, called Waking the Tiger. And he defines trauma as a loss of connection with yourself. He says a fundamental fracture, a loss of connection to ourselves, our families, and the world around us. This loss is often hard to recognize because it happens slowly over time. We adapt to these subtle changes, sometimes without even noticing them. And so, trauma is not the external event that happens. Trauma is the impact of that event, which is the disconnection from ourselves. And because it can be subtle and happen over time, we actually adapt in such ways that we believe we're the adaptations. We start to think that we are the adaptations that we've come to as a result of the trauma of disconnection. So we start to believe that we are the disconnection, and we are the forms and manifestations that that disconnection assumes. Now, this definition that Peter gives is also the one given by other great spiritual teachers. Eckhart Tolle says, basically all emotions are modifications of one primordial, undifferentiated emotion that has its origin in the loss of awareness of who you are beyond the name and the form. And that's associated with a sense of abandonment, with a sense of incompleteness. And he says the simplest word for it is pain. But pain, of course, is so non-specific. It's that loss of self. And my other great mentor, A.H. Almaas, writes, the fundamental thing that happened, and the greatest calamity, is not that there was no love or support. He's talking about in childhood. Let me pause here for a moment and tell you that as a physician, I found that it doesn't matter what the ailment is. The essence of it is the loss of connection to the self. So whether you've got multiple sclerosis, whether you got rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue, colitis, Crohn's disease, chronic asthma, cancer, ALS, it actually begins with a disconnection from the self.
Here's how it's believed to help. 1. Emotional insight and processing. Ayahuasca contains psychoactive compounds like DMT and harmine, which can induce profound altered states of consciousness. During these experiences, individuals may confront and process deep-seated emotions and traumatic memories, leading to insights that can aid in healing. 2. Perspective shift. The intense experiences and visions brought on by ayahuasca can help individuals see their problems from new perspectives. This shift can lead to a greater understanding of their addiction or trauma, potentially altering their approach to recovery. 3. Increased self-awareness. Ayahuasca can heighten self-awareness, allowing individuals to explore their inner selves more deeply. This increased awareness can help uncover the root causes of their addiction or trauma, facilitating a more targeted and effective healing process. 4. Spiritual and personal growth. Many people report experiencing spiritual insights or personal revelations during ayahuasca ceremonies. These experiences can contribute to a sense of purpose or connection, which may support recovery from addiction and trauma. 5. Emotional release. The ceremonial setting of ayahuasca use often involves guided support and a safe space for emotional release. Participants might experience cathartic moments that help release pent-up emotions and trauma. 6. Community and support. Ayahuasca ceremonies are typically conducted in group settings, providing a sense of community and shared experience. This collective support can be beneficial for those dealing with trauma and addiction, helping them feel less isolated. While ayahuasca shows promise for some individuals, it's crucial to approach its use with caution. It's important to consult with healthcare professionals and consider the legal and safety aspects of its use, as well as ensure that any ceremony is conducted under the guidance of experienced and reputable practitioners.
I will not have the time to prove that to you today. That's a whole other talk. I'm just telling you my conclusion about that. I've written about it. If you move to do so, you can read about it. But the essence of all this dis-ease or disease is that disconnection from the self and the result of the adaptations. It's not that the disconnection makes us sick, it's our adaptations to that disconnection that make us sick. So what begins as an adaptation, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment, ends up causing illness. And whether that's physical illness or mental illness, it doesn't matter. It all comes to the same thing. And the same with addiction. So addiction is just another adaptation. Addiction. Some of you know I worked in the downtown east side of Vancouver, North America's most concentrated area of drug use. And every person down there had been abused as a child. And all the women I worked with had been sexually abused. All the men had been traumatized sexually or in other ways. The addiction is not the problem. The reason that we don't treat addiction very well, which is a actually, to say that we don't treat it very well is an understatement, is precisely because we don't get that the addiction is not the problem. The addiction is an adaptation. And let me just give you my definition of addiction. Any behavior that gives you temporary relief, pleasure, that you crave, and that you pursue despite negative consequences. So that's an addiction. Any behavior. Drugs, sex, gambling, internet, relationships, work, whatever it is, eating. It's any behavior that provides temporary relief and pleasure, and you crave despite the negative consequences. So that's an addiction. So let me ask you, by that definition, how many of you would agree that at some time or another you've had some kind of addictive pattern in your life? Just raise your hands, would you? Okay, all right. So let me ask some of you that are willing to say so. And I'm not going to ask you what you're addicted to or when or for how long, but simply, what did it do for you? Not what was wrong with it, but what did you like about it? Okay, so anybody? Yes? Gave you? It gave you pleasure. Okay, great. Thank you. Who else? Yes.
Avoidance of the other.
I'm sorry?
An avoidance of the other.
Avoidance.
The pressure, the stress, the conflict.
Okay, avoidance of conflict. Thank you. Yes.
Ease the pain.
It eases the pain. Yes. Distraction from the pain. Okay, great. So thank you. I mean, we could go on, but can you see that everything you said, easing of pain, avoidance of conflict, pleasure, these are normal human aspirations. There's nothing wrong with any of them. In other words, the addiction wasn't your problem. Your problem is, how come on God's green earth you could find no pleasure? Something had blocked your capacity to experience pleasure and joy. Something had created so much conflict in your life that you had to escape from it. Something had given you so much pain that you needed distraction or relief from the pain. And hence my mantra, the first question is not why the addiction, but why the pain. And that pain goes back to that original disconnection. And so my other teacher, A.H. Alma, says, speaking about childhood, the fundamental thing that happened and the greatest calamity is not that there was no love or support. The greater calamity, which is caused by that first calamity, is that you lost the connection to your essence. That is much more important than whether your mother or father loved you or not. And by extension, I'm going to make the perhaps astonishing statement that the fundamental problem was not that you were sexually abused, was not that you were beaten, was not that you were abandoned, not that your parents couldn't love you the way you needed to be loved. It's that as a result of all that, you lost the connection to yourself. That's the trauma. So there's the external event, then the impact. And although it's impossible to have it happen this way, but had you been beaten and abused, but had that not resulted in the disconnect from yourself, you would not have been traumatized. And so that what are we looking for then is that reconnection with ourselves. And the loss of connection itself is an adaptation. Why is that an adaptation? Because if it's so painful to be myself, I better disconnect. If it's so painful for me to be aware of my gut feelings and to be able to assert them and to manifest them and to declare them, I better disconnect from my gut feelings. And it's that connection from the gut feeling, which happens right in the body. That's the trauma. And then we spend the rest of our lives trying to compensate. How do we compensate? Well, through addiction. Or we compensate by developing certain personality patterns that then will somehow try to get us indirectly what we didn't get in the first place, which is the love that would have allowed us to connect to ourselves. So then we become our personalities. At least we become who we think we are as a personality. So if you didn't get the attention that you needed as a child, just for yourself, then you might become consumed by attracting attention, then you'll be attractive all the time. And hence the $30 billion cosmetic surgery industry, because people have lost the connection to themselves, and now they want validation from the outside. Or You didn't get the approval you needed for who you were. Now you want to win approval from others as a substitute. You weren't valued for who you were. Now you're consumed by measuring up to others' expectations so that you can get your sense of value through what others think of you, what other people think of you. You weren't esteemed for who you are. Now you're going to be wanting to impress people all the time. And then these are all adaptations. These are all adaptations. But we mistake ourselves for adaptations. And then because we couldn't be ourselves, because being ourselves would have meant too much pain, too much suffering, too much vulnerability. Vulnerability, the Latin word vulnerare, to wound. Our wound would be too raw. We cover up our vulnerability by these compensatory mechanisms, and we close our hearts. And when we close our hearts, we no longer know how to love ourselves or others. And we no longer have pleasure or joy. And then you have the statement by Meister Eckhart, who's the 13th century spiritual master, who says, a human being has so many skins inside, covering the depths of the heart. We know so many things, but we don't know ourselves. Again, that loss of self. Why? 30 or 40 skins or hides, as thick and as hard as an ox's or a bear's, cover the soul. And he says, go into your ground and learn to know yourself there.
Dr. Gabor Mate is a believer of A.H. Almas' works. A.H. Almas, born Ibrahim Abraham in 1944, is a well-known spiritual teacher and author in the field of modern spirituality and self-realization. He is the founder of the Diamond Approach, a contemporary spiritual path that integrates psychological and spiritual work. Almas's teachings focus on the exploration of the true self and the development of self-awareness. He combines elements of traditional spiritual wisdom with insights from modern psychology to help individuals understand and realize their authentic nature. His work emphasizes the importance of deep inner work and personal transformation as the means to achieve spiritual growth and self-realization. He once said, "Your conflicts, all the difficult things, the problematic situations in your life are not chance or haphazard. They are actually yours. They are specifically yours, designed specifically for you by a part of you that loves you more than anything else."
The path is mostly about finding out about who and what we are. And it turns out to really know who and what we are, we need to find out what is the nature of all of reality. Diamond Approach teaching formulated its own language and its own path. It became a very dynamic, alive, living teaching that now, 35 or 40 years after the initial discovery, it's still alive.
The Diamond Approach has a very exquisite set of practices. There is the large group work where we have a teacher give a teaching. And then we break up into smaller groups for an inquiry.
An investigation of your own personal experience. It's not a mental investigation, but one that involves sensing, feeling deeply, and understanding all of your experience.
Much that it doesn't want you to lose the chance. It will go to extreme measures to wake you up. It will make you suffer greatly if you don't listen. What else can it do? That is its purpose.
Well, why to develop these skins, these hides? These are the compensations. These are how we try and protect ourselves from that woundedness. And that same adaptation that helped us endure those early losses, and primarily the loss of ourselves, then become our burden, then become our separation from the world. That's the source of our alienation. And the problem is this doesn't only happen on an individual level, it happens in a social level. Because we live in a society that actually is profoundly alienated. And we live in a society that actually validates our invalidity. We live in a society that validates our false self. So that not only do we develop these compensatory mechanisms, it's even that we're rewarded for it. So let's say you're a deeply wounded person and you emotionally shut down so badly that your eyes go dead because you were hurt so badly you couldn't bear to look at reality. And let's say that you're so scared of vulnerability that you're going to attack vulnerability wherever you see it. And let's say that you feel so weak because you lost that connection to your true self, that you have to have power and control. You know what becomes of you? You become Prime Minister of Canada. That's a deeply traumatized person that we just displaced. He is. He is. And now we've elected another one. Maybe not quite so traumatized. Maybe not quite so wounded. Maybe a little bit more connected. Maybe a little bit. That's the best we can hope for. What I'm saying is that the world rewards, or in my case, the world rewards my workaholism, because look, you know, it's a wonderful doctor, always available for everybody except himself, and everybody except the people that really need him close to him. So the world rewards it, and so as
Eckhart Tolle once said, "The primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it." This quote underscores his belief that our internal reactions and perceptions, rather than external events, are the true sources of our trauma and unhappiness. When God expresses itself in our dimension here, there is a seeming evolution of consciousness. In other words, one could say that God gradually is expressing him, her, itself, gradually more and more fully in this dimension. And I think what I've just said now is the most one could say, because, and I've already said too much, because the mystery of the universe cannot be contained in words.
the author of the book, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying says, the greatest achievement of modern culture is the brilliant selling of samsara. Samsara is the cycle of suffering, and its barren distractions. Modern society seems to me a celebration of all the things that lead away from truth, make truth hard to live for, and discourage people even from believing that it exists. So not only do we suffer this trauma because our parents are unconscious or so hurt themselves that they simply couldn't help traumatizing us, we then have a world that validates the falseness, that validates the personality which was developed as a compensation for the loss. And that's why it's so difficult. And that's why even when people go into ceremony with a plant or with LSD, which is not a plant but a substance, or holotropic breathwork, or meditation, and whatever experiences they have, and there are experiences of tremendous insight that people can journey through these various modalities. The real difficulty is not in having those experiences. The real difficulty is then how do you make that experience live in your life? How do you manifest that insight in your daily living when the world is so intent of unrobbing you of the very truth of things? Because the economy, the capitalist economy, depends on your false sense of self. If you were really too connected to yourself, you wouldn't buy most of the products that you buy. At least you wouldn't be so attached to them. You know, I was in San Francisco 3 or 4 years ago, and my wife and I were walking somewhere in a downtown area, and we found this line of people, 4 or 5 abreast, right around the block. So I said to somebody, okay, what's this all about? What are you people lining up for? He says, the iPad, the new iPad just came out. And I said, okay, I get it. I don't have an iPad. I don't appreciate its multifold benefits, but nevertheless, I said, okay, I can believe that the iPad is a wonderful instrument, but why are you lining up? I couldn't get it tomorrow. Man, you don't understand. It's the iPad. I mean, this guy actually thought, and I've had the same thoughts in relation to other products, that this is going to somehow make a difference in his life. So, I mean, this society just feeds off that.
Consider the relentless pursuit of success and perfection portrayed in media. Success is often equated with wealth, beauty, and social status. This creates a narrow definition of worth, pressuring individuals to measure their self-worth against unrealistic standards. As a result, many find themselves in a constant state of comparison and dissatisfaction, struggling to meet these imposed ideals rather than embracing their own unique strengths and qualities. Furthermore, societal norms frequently perpetuate stereotypes and biases. For instance, traditional gender roles and expectations can confine individuals to predefined paths, stifling personal growth and self-expression. A person may feel compelled to follow a career or lifestyle that aligns with societal expectations rather than pursuing their own passions and interests. This disconnect between societal expectations and personal identity can lead to a profound sense of alienation and discontent. When we are guided more by societal dictates than by our own values and desires, we risk losing touch with who we truly are. It's essential to challenge these external narratives and seek to understand and embrace our authentic selves. To counteract this, fostering self-awareness and self-acceptance is crucial. Encouraging open dialogue about individuality, celebrating diverse experiences, and questioning societal norms can help individuals reclaim their personal narratives. By doing so, we can create a society that values each person's unique journey and allows for a more genuine and fulfilling self-expression. Moreover, the manipulation of consumer vulnerability plays a significant role in shaping this distorted narrative. Advertisers and marketers exploit human insecurities and desires to sell products and services. By preying on our fears of inadequacy and our longing for acceptance, they create artificial needs and desires. This manipulation feeds into the societal pressures of beauty, success, and happiness, convincing people that their worth is contingent upon consuming specific products or adopting certain lifestyles. For instance, beauty and fashion industries often use images of idealized, unattainable standards to market their products. This not only perpetuates unrealistic expectations, but also fosters a sense of inadequacy in those who cannot meet these standards. The same tactics are used in various other sectors, from health and wellness to technology, where the promise of improvement or fulfillment is often tied to consumerism. Furthermore, societal norms frequently perpetuate stereotypes and biases. Traditional gender roles and expectations can confine individuals to predefined paths, stifling personal growth and self-expression. A person may feel compelled to follow a career or lifestyle that aligns with societal expectations rather than pursuing their own passions and interests. This disconnect between societal expectations and personal identity, compounded by consumer manipulation, can lead to a profound sense of alienation and discontent. When we are guided more by societal dictates and commercial pressures than by our own values and desires, we risk losing touch with who we truly are. It's essential to challenge these external narratives and seek to understand and embrace our authentic selves. To counteract this, fostering self-awareness and self-acceptance is crucial. Encouraging open dialogue about individuality, celebrating diverse experiences, and questioning societal norms and consumer influences can help individuals reclaim their personal narratives. By doing so, we can create a society that values each person's unique journey and allows for a more genuine and fulfilling self-expression.
So then, let me tell you a few things that I've learned in this psychedelic experience. And I began to work with ayahuasca about 8 years ago now, I guess, when my book on addiction came out, and I kept getting these emails or of questions at my speaking engagements. What do I know about ayahuasca and the healing of addiction? And I'd say, well, I don't know anything about it really. And next question. And a week later, another email or another inquiry. What do you know about ayahuasca and the healing of addiction? I said, nothing. Next question. And I finally started getting annoyed. And I've said this before, but I started feeling like Brian in The Life of Brian. Have you seen that movie? Where people think that Brian is the Messiah, and they keep genuflecting, and they keep, wanting to worship him. And he's saying, listen, I'm not the Messiah, leave me alone.
Messiah! I'm not the Messiah! I say you are, Lord, and I...
But finally he gets sick of it, and he says, okay, I'm the Messiah, now fuck off, okay? And these people come to him and say, how shall we fuck off, my Lord? And that's how I was with ayahuasca. Okay, I don't know anything about ayahuasca, now fuck off. And then I got the message that maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. I do have a thick brain, a very thick mind. And I was working with psilocybin this summer with a therapist in San Francisco, and I did say to her, listen, you better give me a whole whack of it, because I have a very thick mind, But I got it. There was a message here, and so then I began to work with it, and I really see how it can help. How can it help? And not just ayahuasca, but any path, any substance, and sometimes other paths that don't involve substances. I mean, one of the things I don't want to create here is the impression that I'm not one of these messianic believers in substances or plants. I really am not. Some of you maybe, I'm not. I don't think they're the answers to the problems of the world. I think it's too bad if they were, because they're never going to be around enough of them, and not enough people will participate in them, that they're going to be the answer. The answer is going to have to come from somewhere else. And where the answer is going to have to come from? Deep inside people, because the truth is already there. So the plants don't give us the truth. The plant helps us manifest and see the truth. That's a great path, but I'm not messianic about it. But nevertheless, since we're talking about plants and the plant spirit, how can they help us? So in two ways, really. Well, at least two ways. The first one, when I first did ayahuasca, because somebody said, you know what, you can actually do a ceremony up here in Vancouver, and a Peruvian shaman that I know Andrew works with, Diego Palma, was up here, and he was leading ceremonies, and about an hour into it, this beautiful music was playing, and there were tears of joy and pleasure coursing down my face, and I felt this tremendous love, and it wasn't love. There was love for particular people, but it was much greater than that. And what I really got was that this love is actually my essence. Which is not to say, and the essence that I've been disconnected from all my life, these skins that I've developed over my heart to protect myself from the pain, because when your heart is open and the love is flowing, you really can get hurt. And last year in December in Yelapa, where I lead the retreats with ayahuasca, I had the experience of my heart opening up and trust connecting me with the universe, and I got that really that's our essence, that opening, that open-heartedness, that love is our essence. And if that's our essence, why don't we realize it? Why doesn't Stephen Harper realize it? Why don't the rest of us realize it? It's because it hurts so much when it's not reciprocated. It hurts so much when it's not understood. It hurts so much when it's wounded. And so we develop these skins, we shut down. And specifically about addictions like many other behaviors are all about escaping from the pain. But if we realize that that love is really our very essence, there's nothing to run away from. What's there to run? if you really get it. And the other thing that the plant spirits can do is they can connect us to the experiences in a very deep way that made us run in the first place. And so sometimes people talk about bad experiences with ayahuasca or acid or anything. From my point of view, when somebody talks about a bad experience, two things are going on. One is their personality, their mind is judging the experience, because the personality was developed in the first place to run away from the pain. And all these things that we think we are, they're just our personality, which was developed in the first place as a compensation not to feel pain.
Challenging. Many who embark on this journey encounter a range of misconceptions and obstacles, from overwhelming experiences to doubts about the medicine's efficacy. The journey is not just about the ceremony itself, but also about the preparation and integration surrounding it. Preparing for an ayahuasca ceremony involves significant dietary and energetic adjustments. For days before the ceremony, participants are advised to avoid salt and sweets. This dietary restriction is believed to facilitate the medicine's effectiveness by helping the body process it more cleanly and maintaining an open, energetic state. The idea is that by cleansing the body and mind, the medicine can work more deeply and effectively. Following the ceremony, it's encouraged to take a break from the restrictive diet. Enjoying fruits and salt and absorbing the energies of the jungle and surroundings helps reintegrate and balance the experience. During the ceremony, time seems to dissolve. Unlike in the structured, clock-bound world of the West, the ceremony unfolds naturally, guided by the rhythms of the environment and the wisdom of local shamans. This cultural immersion offers a unique perspective. The absence of clocks allows participants to experience events as they come, unhurried and unforced. The individual chats with shamans are a cornerstone of this experience, providing a space to share personal intentions and gain insights tailored to one's journey. Before participating, discussing medical history and personal intentions with the shamans is crucial. This dialogue helps in receiving personalized guidance, ensuring that the ceremony aligns with one's goals, whether seeking clarity, self-love, or direction in life. The shaman's insights are meant to guide participants through their experiences, offering support and wisdom. Ayahuasca, known for its purging effects, requires a mindful approach. Setting clear, positive intentions before consuming the medicine is essential. This preparatory step can significantly influence the outcomes, helping to focus the experience on personal growth and healing. The process may involve confronting and releasing deep-seated emotions or thoughts, making the experience both intense and transformative. Ultimately, while the journey with ayahuasca can be challenging, it offers a profound opportunity for personal and spiritual growth. Embracing the preparation, respecting the traditions, and integrating the experience thoughtfully can lead to meaningful insights and transformations.
But secondly, it also means that when they had that experience, they didn't have the right guidance. Because in the appropriate context, and this is where I think I will probably not be the only one at this conference to emphasize this, but whatever you do, and I know some of you have journeyed by yourselves, I don't recommend it. If you choose that, you choose that. But really, I think we're such complicated, complex beings in the Western world, and there's so much cultural and psychological barrier between who we think we are and who we actually are, that it's really safer to engage in these journeys with people that are experienced and somewhat wise in helping us guide us through it. So when somebody talks about a bad experience, I say, no, you didn't have a bad experience. What you had is an experience where you experienced pain. What you had was an experience where you were in touch with a lot of fear, maybe even terror. But that pain and that terror, you've been carrying inside yourself all your life. and you've been running away from it all your life. It's not a bad thing to experience them. It's only bad if you have no means to digest the experience, to understand it, to put it into context, and to move on for it. So when I work with people with ayahuasca, or when I go into an experience myself with some other guide, whether with 5-MeO, DMT, or whether with psilocybin, or whatever it is, I don't care whether pain is going to come up, fear is going to come up, terror is going to come up. In fact, if it comes up, so be it, because it's only coming up because it's already there. Would I rather be aware of it and know it and revisit it with the awareness and the strength and the mind of an adult? Or would I keep myself still in denial of it? So there are no bad experiences. There are only experiences whose meaning you haven't divined, you haven't had the guidance to understand, and you haven't had the support to integrate into your life. So for me, it's never about beautiful experiences, entities, songs, beautiful colors. That happens, that's great. That's what you're meant to have at that time. I'm not putting that down, but that can't be the intention. The intention has to be the truth, whatever the truth is. And if the truth at that moment is painful, that's great. That's great. Because once we realize, our essence, well, first of all, once we realize the degree of pain that we each carry, the fear that we each carry. Let me give you a quote from Almas. He says, the child is very open and can feel the pain and suffering going on in its immediate environment. The child is aware of its own body and can also feel the tension, rigidity, and pain in the body of the mother or of anyone else he's with. If the mother suffers, the baby suffers too. The pain never gets discharged. The organism does not develop the confidence that it can regulate itself and that things will happen as they should. And if the pain and suffering continues, they will have a disintegrating effect on the organism, and the child will experience organismic fear for its very survival. So when people at our ceremonies experience terror, I say congratulations, you've gone back to your experience as an infant. This is a memory. This is not who you are. And underneath that fear, there's that connected self that knows no fear. What's there to be afraid of when you're connected to everything? So those are the two major dynamics that I find helpful in the plant-spirit experiences. First of all, we get to find what we're running from, the fear, the pain. And if we're fortunate enough, then before or after, we also get to experience the depth of who we are, which also means we don't have to keep running. And then the issue becomes then, how do you incorporate that? How do you integrate that into your life? And so I have to emphasize here the importance of integration. So don't expect the insight, which is like a door opening, to save you, because it won't. Because you can have that experience in the moment under the influence of the particular substance that you've been working with. But unless you are intent on taking that substance all the time, which you can't, then you better find ways of integrating that insight into your life. And that takes daily work. That takes daily work. So the post-ceremony, or the post-event, the post-experience integration is at least as important as the experience itself. Otherwise, you're just going to keep going back, looking for the same experience over and over again. And nothing necessarily will have shifted for you.
To further support the insights about the impact of emotional suppression on physical health, including the immune system, it's helpful to explore other scientific perspectives and research that support this connection. Here are some key areas that you can look up for further understanding of Dr. Gabor Mate's insights. 1. Psychoneuroimmunology, PNI. Psychoneuroimmunology is the study of how the mind, psycho, the nervous system, neuro, and the immune system, immunology, interact. This field provides substantial evidence supporting the link between emotional states and immune function. Research in PNI has shown that psychological stress and negative emotions can impair immune responses, making the body more susceptible to infections and diseases. Stress and immune function. Studies have demonstrated that chronic stress and emotional suppression can alter immune system functioning. For example, stress hormones like cortisol can suppress the production of key immune cells, leading to a reduced ability to combat pathogens and increased vulnerability to illness. 2. The impact of emotional suppression. Research has examined the effects of suppressing emotions on physical health. Emotional suppression, the process of inhibiting the expression of emotions, has been associated with various health issues. Emotional suppression and health risks. A study published in Health Psychology found that individuals who habitually suppress their emotions are at a higher risk for various health problems, including cardiovascular disease and autoimmune disorders. The research suggests that suppressed emotions contribute to chronic stress, which adversely affects immune function. 3. Autoimmune diseases and stress. The link between stress, emotional suppression, and autoimmune diseases has been explored in several studies. Autoimmune diseases, where the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's tissues, have been linked to psychological stress and emotional factors. Stress and autoimmune disease. Research published in the Journal of Autoimmunity indicates that psychological stress and emotional factors can exacerbate autoimmune conditions. Stress has been shown to trigger or worsen symptoms of autoimmune diseases by disrupting immune regulation. 4. Mind-body interventions. Mind-body interventions, such as mindfulness and psychotherapy, have been studied for their effects on physical health, validating the mind-body connection. Mindfulness and immune function. Studies have found that mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and other mindfulness practices can enhance immune function. For example, research published in Psychosomatic Medicine indicates that mindfulness practice can improve immune responses and reduce inflammation, suggesting that managing emotional stress has positive effects on physical health. 5. Neuroimmunology. Neuroimmunology research explores how the nervous system interacts with the immune system, supporting the idea that emotional and psychological states influence immune function. Neuroimmune interactions. Research published in Nature Reviews. Immunology highlights how the nervous system and immune system communicate. This includes how stress and emotional factors can influence immune responses, supporting the idea that emotional suppression and stress can lead to immune system dysfunction. So basically, all this science stuff, like how our minds and bodies are linked, how holding in emotions affects us, and how stress plays into autoimmune diseases, backs up what Gabor Mate is saying. The research shows that our mental state really does mess with our immune system, so it's super important to pay attention to our emotional health for overall well-being. You can check our video by Bessel van der Kolk about trauma. I will post the link down below.
There are some people, with or without substances, who are able to have a transformative, transcendental experience that really does rewire them permanently. But I've met very few of those people. I've met very few of them, if any. I know of some. But for most of us, it's ongoing work. So the experiences can open those doors of perception. They can give us glimpses or deep but momentary experiences of our true selves. But then the work is to go back and keep clearing out all the accumulated debris that we've took on ever since early infancy to compensate for the loss. So when you understand my definition of trauma, which has to do with that disconnect, then you understand that trauma has many different manifestations. There's a psychological, emotional aspect of trauma, which is that disconnect from the self, and therefore also a relationship to the world. So a traumatized person, and by my definition, most of us are traumatized. We live in a different world. We live in a world where we're alone. We live in a world which is perhaps dangerous. We live in a world that's indifferent. We live in a world where we have to constantly having to work to validate ourselves. That's the world we live in. And the Buddha said very clearly that it's with our thoughts, with our minds that we create the world. That's the world that we create. The problem is, this is the task of modern psychology perhaps, this is where modern psychology can so usefully blend with ancient spiritual teaching, is that before our minds create the world creates our minds. And so we have to go back to who we were before the world created our mind. In terms of mental health, depression, anxiety, addiction, psychoses, these all begin as compensations. You might think, how can depression be a compensation? Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you have a 2-year-old and she's angry with you. Incidentally, if you do have a 2-year-old and she's not angry with you, you haven't done your job. It's that simple. Because she cannot have a cookie before dinner. And she can't have a shiny knife to play with. And she can't pull the dog's tail. And she can't climb on the windowsill when the window is open. You have to say no. And 2-year-olds, like many of us as adults even, can't distinguish between their needs and their wants. So when you frustrate somebody's perceived needs, they get aggressive. Frustration is the engine of aggression, as my friend, the psychologist Gordon Neufeld says. So the child gets aggressively angry because she couldn't have that cookie. Nothing wrong with that, so long as you're not threatened by the anger. But what if you grew up in a family where there was rage a lot, where your parents were in conflict, rageful conflict, and you have this intrinsic and innate, implicit memory of fear whenever you experience or witness anger. And then unwittingly, you give the message to your 2-year-old that good little girls don't get angry. What the child is getting is not that good little girls don't get angry, but that angry little girls don't get loved. And what will she do with the anger? Since she can't do without your love, she cannot. She's going to push the anger down. What's the word for pushing something down? Depression. And 30 years later, she'll be diagnosed with depression. And somebody will hand her a pill. And that pill, which I'm not against, I've taken them, they can be helpful, but they're not the answer. The answer is to actually, what is it that I've pushed down? And why did I? And do I still need to? In other words, to reconnect again with the real self. So mental health issues, they all begin with compensations. The tuning out of ADHD is not a disease. It's a coping mechanism to deal with overwhelming stress. These temporary compensatory mechanisms become a source of pathology later on. Physical health, when you suppress yourself in order to please others, because of the mind and the body being one unit, they're inseparable. This is not my particular insight. This is what science shows us. And as I was saying to a medical colleague just a few minutes ago, that the problem with medicine is we keep talking about evidence-based practice, but we ignore much of the evidence. And the evidence is that when you suppress emotions, you're actually suppressing the immune system as well, for the simple reason that you can't separate the mind from the body. Scientifically, you can't. And the consequence is then the immune system will attack you, and now you have autoimmune disease like multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis, or you get cancer. That too began as a compensation. That pushing down of emotion was how you compensated for your parents' inability to handle your emotions. Trauma has then impacts on physical health, on your relationships, and finally, of course, it's got a spiritual aspect because, and spirituality is such a loaded word in the sense that we all load it with their own particular meanings, but I'll give you my own general understanding of it, which is spirituality is the awareness that we're not our personalities, that we're not just our bodies, we're not just our thoughts and our emotions. There's something deeper, more eternal, more connected about us, and that connection is with the universe. Well, when you're traumatized, you shut that down too. So this is where the plant medicines can be so helpful. And I've known people that are healing from significant autoimmune diseases that they were given up for dead by medical doctors. People that are healing or have healed from multiple sclerosis, from suicidal depression. Last year we worked with a woman in our retreat that had tried to kill herself 17 times. Where is the healing coming from? Well, the very meaning of the word healing means wholeness. And we become whole when we reconnect with ourselves. I'll leave you the final quote before I take questions and comments. Thomas Merton, the spiritual teacher, Catholic monk, talked about surrendering, conquering ourselves, or allowing the Spirit to conquer us. So self-conquest is not a willful act of self-abnegation. What it actually is surrendering to something greater than we are. And as a Catholic, he'd call that the Holy Spirit, but you can call it whatever you want. And he says, in order to gain possession ourselves, we have to have some confidence, some hope of victory. In order to keep that hope alive, we must usually have some taste of victory. We must know what victory is and like it better than defeat. Now, at the very least, this work with the plant spirits can give us a taste of that victory, can give us a glimpse of ourselves, can give us a glimpse of reality. And that can be the beginning of the path to healing. Thank you. Thank you.
Understanding the deep connection between our emotions and physical health is truly empowering. By acknowledging and embracing our feelings, we're not just taking care of our mental well-being, but we're also nurturing our entire body. The science shows us that when we honor our emotional experiences, we're helping to strengthen our immune system and improve our overall health. So, let's make a conscious effort to listen to ourselves, express our emotions openly, and practice self-compassion. By doing so, we're not only paving the way for a healthier, more balanced life, but we're also embracing our full potential for growth and healing. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to Inside Serene. We're committed to publishing more videos that support you on your healing journey. Remember, life is short. Let's live in the moment and cherish what lies ahead. We're here to support you every step of the way. Here's to living with authenticity, embracing our emotions, and thriving in both mind and body. Thank you for being part of our community.
The work with the one-on-one teachers has been enormously powerful.
What's, I think, unique about that approach is that it's approaching an experience in a way that does not attempt to change it.
The basic premise of the diamond approach is if our ego structure doesn't have an ultimate existence, it can be penetrated through our understanding and our direct experience.
It's like, oh, ego is a gold mine. How can we work with it? How can we mine the gold that got trapped in that constructed sense of self and liberate it?
One of the things in the diamond approach that has happened is that I've learned to mine the vein of truth in every tradition.
Is completely open to any view, and every state of being has its value.
The work has supported me in the grieving process by allowing me to be fully in it.
The freedom
is the freedom from the shape that we've taken, not from the individual consciousness. The individual consciousness becomes restricted by the history, and the practices open up that history. So in a certain way, you could say we come to our natural state. So we use the belly, the heart, and the mind to begin to communicate so that it becomes more refined. We become an instrument that can open up to deeper and deeper levels of our experience.
No, there isn't a finality to the process of self-realization, but rather a matter of a continual, unending unfoldment.
Realization is becoming real, and what can become real is reality itself. Who else would become real?
Realization, specifically, I use to mean to be it and to live it. There's a teaching that has to do with being in the world and being engaged in the world and having a normal life. Friendship, marriage, work. At some point, there's no distinction between what I am and what my life is.
The Diamond approach has opened my heart in a conscious way, bringing together my personality, my spiritual dimensions, and every aspect of my life into an integrated whole.
That something had so fundamentally changed in my sense of myself.
I've learned that I've got a lot to learn about love.